especially now, I love the don't say I can't thing, because right now I feel like we're getting into an excuse culture
Yeah.
where there's so much excuse. And someone like you, I must think you sit back and say, guys, people, come
Right.
on, just come on. I know we all don't start at the same
Mm-hmm.
starting block. We definitely don't. Anyone who thinks we all do is just then they're living in a fantasy world. But I mean, you can shape your destiny. I
Exactly.
mean, you know what I mean? So what do you say to folks like that are saying, well, I'm not, I wasn't brought into privilege, and I wasn't born into, my parents never had money, et cetera, et cetera. There's unlimited
Right.
excuses. And going back to the do not say I can't, motto, like, what would you say to folks like that?
You have to hold yourself accountable for your future. I mean, you can't blame shift your. You can only to a certain extent blame shift your past, right? You're born into. You can't control where you're born into. You just can't control that.
Right.
But the moment you know and you're aware that you have power by your hands, you got to hold yourself accountable for where you're now going. Period. And you have to get out of that excuse mentality to where if you're going to talk about anything that went wrong or that's going wrong, and you're not including yourself in your reason, you're likely making an excuse. You're very likely making an excuse, as opposed to that being a completely valid reason that you're coming up with. And that's the thing to where I'm big on helping people to hold themselves accountable. I will say things that strikes people in the heart to help them to feel the conviction that they need for change. And that's really what it comes down to. Like, all these excuses again. You said it, man. That's the culture. I hear it on a daily basis, and it's like, man, they don't get it. They don't know their own power.
Yeah.
They have the ability to
Yeah.
change literally what they're complaining about, but they're using their time to
Yeah.
complain as opposed to time to change. And that's
Yeah.
literally what it's about. And for those that tends to make excuses, the way to get out of that is to learn about whatever you're making excuses about. Dive into learning about whatever went wrong. That's like this huge thing and a huge way to dig yourself out of that hole of excuses. Learn about whatever you're complaining about or whatever you're making excuses about. And that right there will help you to make the adjustments needed to correct that incorrect thing.
Yeah. 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 And I said this over email, but your 4-minute little teaser
Oh,
on
yeah.
your
Yeah.
wait about the book, man, it gave me goosebumps.
Wow.
I mean, because it really, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Everyone's going to see that, and it just, it really just kind of, it's a cartoon
Right.
about your like you coming up and what all your experiences, how you shape them late night writing the
Yeah.
book, and it's just, I don't know, man. It just, it resonated with me as
Wow.
well. I had similar experience growing up. I didn't write a book, but I saw
Yeah.
some shit, right? Kids should never see, and it's like, I remember just like, cops would kick the door in, dad, mom, just domestic, crazy domestic shit that kids should not
Crazy.
see, and then have to wake up like 3 hours later and drive an hour to school, take a calculus exam, barely pass
Right.
it, and just do that for years after year after year. I'm like, and I never knew. I don't even know how the hell I
Yeah,
did it or
right,
why
right.
I even did it. Just
Right.
I knew. I think for me it was sort of like, I want to get out of this
Yeah.
shit. I got to get out of this, So I kind of see that as a blessing in a sense. I had parents were struggling with a bunch of different things. They were doing the best they
Right.
can, but I knew I needed to just kind of change some stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to follow and just be the next generation
Right.
sitting here in the same spot with the same issues and just downloading all that crap onto the next generation. If I have kids. Prune that family tree sort of thing. So I saw your little video. And I wasn't even kidding. I had goosebumps a mile high.
man.
I was like, I was pumped.
I
what I mean?
appreciate hearing that, man.
So I love it. I absolutely love it. Now your son is going. You have one
One
son.
side, yep. Yep.
Yeah. Now just think about where he's going to be, right? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just I just got excited for your story. I really
thank you,
did.
thank you.
So summarize the book overall. Like what would you say is like kind of the executive summary of your book? And it's out now.
It's
right?
out now,
already
yeah.
been released?
It's out, available on Amazon
Okay.
and BarnesandNoble.com. And I mean,
Cool.
the book, again, it's called Filtering: The Way to Extract Strength from the Struggle, and that's really what it's all about. It's about finding an extraction point and tool when it comes to all that you go through. And obviously, there's much of the difficult moments of life that I pinpoint in the book, but you can apply filtering to the good moments as well. I've been fortunate in playing basketball. I've gotten a number of wins, a lot of victories. I've won multiple national championships, and I filter those moments. You know what I mean? To where it's like, okay, well, how do we actually do that? Like a lot of people, you know, when a high happens, a great thing happens, we're such on a high, we don't lean into that high enough to say, how did I actually pull this off? And when you really
Yeah,
lean
yeah.
into it, you're able to replicate those moments more and more and more. You have to extract some things from it to even avoid yourself from becoming complacent. And that's a big thing that I'm huge on coaching other people. You know, these peak performers out here. I say, look, it happened. Guess what? It's over. You know, and that's why I have to coach people on all the time. Like, okay, it happens. Enjoy it for that moment, but don't live it out too much. You know, it's over. You got to focus on getting that thing again.
Get back to the
Get
grind.
back to the grind. You know, let everybody else celebrate it. Let everybody else celebrate you while they celebrate. But it's over. You have to say, okay, what can I take from this thing to recreate this and replicate it over and over and over again? So again, when it comes to filtering, it's not just for the bad moments. You can do that with the good, but for the bad moments, which we tend to focus on just as humans, because those are the things that really kind of smacks us in the face suddenly. You know, that's when you have to lean into those dark moments. You know, a lot of us, I've told this before to a lot of people, even from the stage, like, look, you know, the high achievers, these ultra successful people, they're not afraid of the dark, right? They lean into the darkness. They go toward the dark moments to pull something, some drive, some motivation from those dark moments. You just alluded to the same thing, as far as you didn't want to spew that over to the next generation, that darkness. So you use it as a driving force to get you away from it that much further, and that's where, you know, high achievers do, to where it's like, okay, if you want to be successful, embrace those dark moments. Don't act like it didn't happen. Talk about them.
Yeah.
You know, lean into those things and say, okay, I'm gonna make sure that this doesn't happen to me. What happened in my past and things like that. And filtering is what's going to help people really do that. You break down your situations. You get into a great emotional brainstorming phase. And when you do that, you actually remove the emotion from that difficult moment. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? You start saying, well, I wonder why this is happening to me. Same exact question, but void of the emotion, because that emotion usually clouds your judgment in that moment. So you have to move that emotion to really see things clearly. And that's what the filtering process does for people, and it helps them to make great adjustments.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, because I think you have a psychology degree,
Yes.
don't you? I believe. So, yeah. I was thinking. I'm very interested in psychology. In fact, that's kind of what this. I love. I have no formal education, but I think it's one of the psychology sort of tenets of, like, you are not your thoughts, right? If you could sort of like separate that, yourself from your thoughts, it's almost like a meditation sort of thing. But it really does, when you're feeling something, realize that's not you, that's you experiencing something, and you can almost be, step outside yourself, be meta, if you will, and be like, hey, why am I feeling that? As opposed to you're caught in the feeling.
Right.
You know what I mean? It sounds like you just articulated that.
You have to. That's exactly what I'm going for. I mean, you have to remove yourself from exactly where you are to then honestly step aside to view things objectively. Because when we're emotional, it's all subjective. We're narrow-minded. We're not open.
Yeah.
And when you remove emotion, you become a therapist in that moment for yourself. Because now, when we see a therapist and you're talking to a therapist, you're the emotional one. They're sitting there so calm, hardly even talking, maybe nodding their head, writing something down. They're emotionless. The therapist is. They're able to receive what's happening, what they're hearing, and when you can do that for yourself. Now, having therapy, that's still a great thing. Outlets and venting, that's important. That's key. But in moments when you're going through something, you don't have the luxury of having a therapist right there 24/7. So,
right.
For me, I had to develop this tool for myself to say, okay, when I go through something, what can I do that can actually help me get through this with a sound mind and not have to wait on hindsight to reveal things to me? I'd much rather be in the moment, be aware of what's taking place so I can develop foresight if this thing tries to come back around. So that's what I had to do when it came down to filtering my moments and really breaking them down and removing my emotions, which wasn't always easy to do. But the moment I started to see how beneficial it was, I said, I got to keep doing this, because I'm able to get through these things without complaining, without even crying about some things that I normally would have before. I was able to get through and actually succeed on the other side.
Yeah, I do. I drew a little like I'm a very visual person, and some people. So I'm drawing things like what shapes people like you, and I got a bunch of little circles with like an arrow going up top. I'm like I got hardship, I got physical tests like basketball because you talked about embracing fatigue, and you had another really cool. I wanted to ask you about. I have faith, and so if you were to draw that out, obviously mine's probably 3% right, but like what do you think? What are the building blocks that created Joel? Right, obviously the hardship thing we talked about, basketball as well. You played professional ball.
Yeah, played pro for a little bit. Yeah, for about 5 seasons. Yeah.
Really? With who?
So I played all over the world, man. I trained with the Sixers for a couple months. I played over in Spain professionally, Ireland, Venezuela, down in South America. Had an NBA Development League contract back in 2010. Just made my rounds, man, around the world, and just was able to meet some amazing people in the process, play with some amazing players, some notable guys throughout my journey, Allen Iverson, and just a number of other, highly touted NBA players.
Yeah,
it was amazing, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're all grinders, right? I mean, everyone thinks they're naturally blessed with their talent, but I mean, you hear the stories about Kobe. I mean, these guys are insane. They're insane. Their work ethic is just disgusting.
It's nuts, man. So, I have to bring this. So I had a conversation with Kobe Bryant for about 30 minutes one day, and it changed everything. That was he told me something just to sum things up. Again, it was about 25, 30-minute conversation, but he told me something during the conversation that was kind of scary, but I didn't even understand it at the moment. But he said, you got to be willing to see black. Because I told him things that I wanted to do, in basketball.
Yeah.
I was 16 years old when this conversation actually happened. So it wasn't, I wasn't an adult at the time, but he saw something in me. At the time we were kind of like eye to eye. I was about 6'5" at the time. He's 6'6", and he's just, he's talking to me. He found out we played for the same AAU team, and it's just me and him and my father talking right there, and giving me all these tips. And I heard the whole Mamba mentality straight from his mouth, man. It was just like nuts to see. This is before the whole Mamba thing even came about for him. Nobody even heard that term with him yet. But he told me you got to be willing to see black. And I get it. I began applying that mentality to where it's like I'm willing to tap out. I'm willing to go that hard toward doing something, an objective, a craft, to where I know without a doubt, nobody can tell me I didn't get the best out of myself. And that mentality, man, it's taken me to some amazing places. It's allowed me to meet some amazing people, be in some amazing venues, just because I'm willing and daring, to be honest with you, to see black.
Yeah, man, that's a bucket list type thing. 30 minutes with Kobe. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing, man. It was again, life changing, mind changing. It changed a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and you hear people getting back to the excuses thing. You hear a lot of folks, it must be nice when they look at someone that's successful.
Right.
And almost never, there's some trust fund babies that just have whatever, but very rarely are those people even admired.
Right.
They have a giant yacht and they don't do anything because he just inherited it. But most of the people we all admire sleep 3 hours. Like they're such hustlers.
Right.
It's like, and that's behind the scenes. Like when you were writing your book, was anyone there sitting you clapping? No. It's 3 a.m. and no one gives a shit.
Exactly.
They don't give a shit. But now you publish your books. Must be nice.
I've gotten that. That. Look, man,
you know what I mean?
It's amazing. I've gotten that on social media. They may see an article or something come up, and I may post it. And I remember, someone recently was like, must be easy, for a professional basketball player to do X, Y, Z, and this and that. I'm like, you don't know anything about my story,
right,
but
exactly.
It's unfortunate when people don't understand that there's another side to success. It's a whole lot of failure before that point. It's so much failure before that point. And
I mean that iceberg picture, that it's so true, man. That success part you see is the little tip. All the other shit you ain't seeing. You're not. And successful people don't care. They're like, all right, well, I don't care. I'm going to do what it takes, and most of it's invisible, and most of it's between me and me, and most of it's when you're sleeping, and that's it.
Exactly.
I love that part of it. It's just like, and it comes with him, and I feel like a lot of successful people are, I don't know what the ratio is, but the humility I'm getting that from you as well, right? And maybe that touches on your faith a little bit, but I don't know, man. It's just there seems to be true success. It doesn't seem like rocket science. It's not easy, but it's
The
it's
formula is
losing
simple, I
weight.
think.
Right. These some easy formulas. I mean, simple formulas, but not easy to execute.
Right. That's it in a nutshell. I mean, it's like it takes practice.
Yeah.
It takes, again, willingness and again, willpower has a whole lot to do with it. Daringness is definitely in the equation as well. There's a whole lot of ingredients. It's some ingredients. It's not complicated though. And that's my objective, is to simplify the routes to success for people, to simplify how to have a vision for yourself, to simplify how to resolve your problems so that they don't revolve and keep coming back around again and again and again. It's not complicated. It just really takes you shifting your perspective and seeing things a different way. And the moment you begin seeing them a different way, now walk in that way. Try it a moment or two. The next time something comes up, try it that way versus your typical default way. If your default way hasn't been working, if it's been working for you, God bless. Do what you're doing already. But if you're looking for another way to resolve what you've been going through your whole life, you need some protocols, some tools in place for when things happen. You feel like you kind of jump off the deep end every time. You gotta try a different way. You gotta see things in a different light.
How is faith? Looking at this picture again. I would sort of faith in as another building block. How has that contributed to your where you are?
In an amazing way, man. I mean, that's why I'm here. To be honest with you, when I say here, I mean still alive. It's my faith, it's my belief in tomorrow being better than yesterday, and faith is everything for me. I mean, because what I've had to tell people so often is like my faith is not a hope, it's beyond hope. Faith to me is just way beyond hope. Like hope is still some uncertainty. Like I hope it happens. It's like you're not sure that's going to happen. Yeah. With me, faith is all about expectancy. I expect stuff to happen. The moment I commit toward doing something, it's already happened to me. I mean it too. This is not some metaphysical stuff. It's already, for me. If I'm going to work toward anything, it's mine. In my opinion, I feel like I deserve it. So I'm going to work extra hard towards something I know I deserve. I mean, that's mine. And it's just some things that I do before I really get to work on things. Some things I wrote about in the book that helps me to get to work that hard, before I even pursue anything, because I know, I deserve it because of some things that I've done beforehand. I make sure I feel it first. The moment I start to feel it, I'm like, it's mine. Let's do this. And I expect it. So faith for me, man, it's taken me so far because it helps me to feel the things that I want before I even pursue them.
So specifically, you say faith. Jesus, Christianity, biblical truths.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's my favorite book.
Yeah.
I love books, but that's my favorite one, man. I'll be honest with you. Yep.
Yeah. No, it's many would agree. Yeah. Some disagree. Many disagree.
Of course, exactly.
Well, you all talking about books. You're. I read somewhere obviously you're super well read. You fell in love with reading years and years ago.
Yeah.
Was it like 4? What did I read? A book a week or something? Did I remember that right?
So at one point when I began to just really change my mindset, this was back in maybe 2015, 2014 or so, going through different things. I began reading 9 books every 3 weeks, and just to really, seek out answers and knowledge. And I was going through just transitioning, from being a pro athlete, just to get acclimated in the quote unquote regular world. Was going through depression and, potential divorce and being a single father periodically because it's like we're together or not together. It was just, it was difficult. But more recently, I gave myself a challenge. This is during the pandemic because I had so much time on my hands out of nowhere. Yeah. Gave myself a challenge of reading 30 books in 30 weeks. And I pulled off reading 31 books in 29 weeks. And It was
Typical
yeah,
overachiever.
exactly, right, exactly. That was my. I said, you know what, man, I already got 30. Let me read one more. I still had like about a week, like 2 weeks left. When I remember, I'm like, okay, let me read another one just to see if I can pull off even more in less time. And
Yeah.
it was an amazing goal, transformative for sure. I felt different afterward, man. It was man, I felt different. I was a whole nother person after those 30 weeks. I was a different beast, man. I just felt like I grew. I just felt like I grew. In
Yeah.
so many I felt like every author became a mentor for me. They just were teaching me. Every book was like, hey, Joel, here's how you do this. Boom. I just gained
Yeah.
40 years of knowledge from somebody. Then another 40 years. Then another. I got thousands of years of knowledge after 30 weeks from reading these books. It was amazing.
What would you say? Like maybe the top three most life changing. Got to be some memorable.
Well, I mean, this book wasn't from this challenge, but this I read this back in that 2014 time period. As a Man Thinketh. That's by James Allen. It was written in 1903. No fluff.
What's the title?
As a Man Thinketh. So it's like
As a Man Thinketh.
yeah, as a man
got it.
thinketh.
Okay.
And amazing book. It's a short but sweet book. I'm talking. This was maybe one of the shortest books I've ever read, but hands down, outside of the Bible, one of the most impactful books I've ever read. It's about, depending on the edition, it's 60 to 90 pages. It's short and sweet, but the fact that there's no fluff whatsoever, no go to my website, no visit me here, no follow me there. There was straight to the point, convicting words that made you feel less than in a positive way. Like, man, I need to be doing more. You're right. I can be
You
doing
knew
more.
you had more in you.
Yeah, and I read that book and I felt guilty. And when I read it, I achieved quite a bit. I was already a pro athlete, but I felt like I'm definitely not doing all that I could do. And that's what I needed to feel. And so As a Man Thinketh is hands down one of my favorite books. Another one that I was a part of that 30-week challenge was ABCs to Success by Bob Proctor. No question, an amazing book. It just really simplified success, to be honest, which is something I'm also always seeking out. There was a business book that I read that was great. I believe it was it's probably right behind me, but I think the 4 executive rules for a CEO or something like that, and it gave some hypothetical scenarios in there. It was a great business read for me. But those are, some great ones,
Yeah. No, that quote, as a man thinketh, how you summarize that. I don't know if you follow Jordan Peterson or any of those guys, but, he has a meme that goes around. It just says, just picture of him, and it says, you're not everything you could be, and you know it.
Yep.
That's all it says. And man, I just hear that all the time. Like, gosh, you were so right. The time we waste doing X, Y, and Z, and whatever. Some folks are just they're very content. But if you're one of those people like you or like me that just wants to always improve on everything,
exactly,
and it's just a you could look at your every day and say, how did I spend why did I spend 20 minutes looking at YouTube?
Exactly.
Like, I didn't even. It was not. You need that in your day to just kind of decompress here and there. But you add it all up, and you're like,
right.
The time gets
wasted,
away from you.
Some precious time. Right. And I'm the same way. I have to catch myself. Like, oh, okay, no, stay on the ball, get on the ball, and that's what it's about, man. That growth.
Yeah, 100%. How old's your son now?
He's 9.
9. Okay.
Old,
I have a 9-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter.
That's awesome, man.
So yeah. So I mean, how do you shape that into your day? Obviously, you hustling. Sometimes you got to balance that, right?
Absolutely.
You got to. So how do you find that balance? Because when I said what you do in a day, playing with your rolling around with your son on the floor.
Right.
Is not wasted time,
No.
right? Sometimes I used to think about that, like, I could be doing this. That, like, wait a minute, you're not wasting time
At
here.
all.
This is your boy. So how does that balance go for you?
I mean, I it's funny because I've had similar thought before, when he was younger. I'm like, again, I had the same revelation. That's the most beautiful time you could be spending.
Yeah.
And, I'm aware that all fathers aren't around, for their
Yeah.
kids. So I'm so intentional about spending time with him, about communicating with him. That's our best connection, is our communication. Like
Yeah, man.
we literally we know one another, and that's a great thing. I was at his back to school night last night, and he wasn't allowed to be there, so he was with his mom. I went to the back to school night,
Yeah, yeah.
and apparently the teacher had the kids fill out a "How well do you know me?" middle.
Oh yeah, yeah, we just did that ourselves. Yeah, yeah, we didn't do so well.
That's right. That's right. Look, I'm gonna tell you, my son is he's the same way on Austin Powers when you had Mini Me and Doctor Evil. But
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah,
son is
yeah.
Mini Me. Like everybody knows him. He's into the same '80s flicks. He loves '80s movies. He loves kung fu flicks. He's a whole Mini Me.
Oh, nice.
So I filled out the thing on the blank side, and then we were able to turn it over and see what our kids put. I think it was like 8 answers. I think I had 7 out of the exact same.
Yeah, we had one of you parents in our school too. Son of a.
It's I mean that's the fun stuff, man. It was really cool just to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
something like that, and my son, man, it's not hard to balance at this point because I put that in the forefront. I make sure like, hey, we're going to do this together. We're going to do that together. And fortunately, he loves basketball. And the reason why I say fortunately
yeah.
is because it's a strong shared interest to where I'm in the
Yeah.
gym. He doesn't mind coming to the gym.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like we get to spend time together, just being in the gym. And so,
Right.
for me, it's a healthy balance to where we sit, watch movies, we draw together. He's a creative kid.
Yeah.
It works out.
And even when you're, this is another thing I sort of realized, sometimes when I'm working or I'm like, I got to do this, I got to do that, and they see me quote unquote hustling,
Yeah.
it's also something they're observing. They're downloading that. I'm
Absolutely.
like, oh, dad's doing this. Dad's my role model. Oh, maybe that's what I should. And I think subconsciously they're getting programmed in a sense to like, maybe that's the best way to approach life.
Right.
Even if you're not directly with them, your actions, your hustle, your drive is something that's a positive thing too, right? They're
No
not going to.
question. I mean,
That's not going to just fall by the wayside. That's
and I can tell already that he picks that up. And it may not be directly because I'll hear something that he's talked about to somebody else, and I'm like, oh, he noticed that. Okay. Like my coaches at our camps. I have my Nike camps every summer, and one of my coaches will come tell me what my son has told them about something about me. I'm like, okay. So he actually, again, like you say, he's taking note. And
yeah.
I'm big on his mindset being in the right place. Like before school, every morning we go over a quote. We have quote cards that I created, and I'm like, let's go over these. You have to read it,
Yeah.
so we can work on reading and comprehension. So I'm like, all right, let's read this quote. Tell me about it. Tell me what you think about it. And it may be a Bruce Lee quote. It may be one of my quotes. It may be whatever. But he has to read
Yeah.
it and tell me what he thinks about it. And he's a whole young philosopher at this point. So it's like,
Nice. Yeah, I love it.
It's
I
a
love
really
it.
cool thing just to know, like, okay, I want to at least be comfortable knowing that he can comprehend a situation. He can think properly about a situation. So these quotes has kind of been pretty cool to do.
Yeah, man. That's you're putting on a clinic as far as being a dad. But I think but again, going back to your childhood, what are some things? It sounds like your dad and your mom were good parents. I don't know. Maybe they just seemed like they were there for you. They were present.
Absolutely right, yeah.
Yeah, and
They were, yeah.
that's fantastic. But I guess other things in your childhood, like what are things that maybe you had seen or you experienced, you felt that you're like thinking consciously, I don't want to let my son see this or feel this, or there's a bunch of stuff you want to always learn and take good from your parents in your neighborhood and your upbringing, and take the good and trim out the bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What are some of those things that you think of all the time? Is there a couple of big ones?
Yeah, I mean, neighborhood was a big one. So that was just, I knew how difficult that was on me as a child. And it wasn't even, again, that I noticed every difficulty. But in hindsight, I'm like, man, that happened because of the environment I was in. That happened because of the neighborhood I was in.
Yeah.
Me getting in fights on the block was because the block that I lived on, or just that environment of desperation that existed, and everyone just trying to get out. That crabs in the barrel mentality, things happening, people stealing from each other because people are without. That drove me to say I cannot have that happen, or have my son be in an environment to where he's feel like, okay, he has to take from somebody else because he doesn't have. So I'm gonna work that much harder to make sure he at least has the necessities, to make sure he's good there. Another thing for me, I'll be honest, was bullying. I wasn't bullied a lot, but I was bullied, in different moments to where I'm like, I can't have that happen for him. So I'm going to just make sure he's at least confident in himself as a kid, as a child. He can, handle himself in a different situation. We talk about this stuff. Hey, we have a boxing bag. Heavy bag, things like just so he can feel confident in himself if confronted with anything. I don't endorse fighting, and he knows that about me. Like, look, I don't want you looking for any fights, whatsoever. But I don't want him to not feel confident if that ever happens. So it's just things that I experienced growing up to where I'm like, I can't have him be unprepared for these different parts of life that are just true parts of life. Like bullying happens, stealing happens, all these things. I just, it's, you can call it
it's like don't start shit, but if shit comes at you,
look,
you want it to be ready.
That's what I told.
That's the world. That's the world.
My father told me that. It's actually put it in my book when I was about 5 years old. I remember sitting on the side of the bed, and he told me, he said, look, if you ever feel threatened, he said, hit first. He said, he trusted me already, even at that age. He said, if you feel threatened, he said, if someone hits you, this is exactly what he told me. This is what I wrote about. He said, if you ever get hit back harder. That was his words to me. If you ever get hit back harder. And I never forgot it. And
it's like life lesson too, right? Life's going to hit you nonstop, but you hit life back. Man, it just transcends,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I'll never forget it, man. And you're right. Spot on with that. That's a life lesson.
But it's too bad too. I'm picturing you and your family growing up, similar to mine, but a little bit different, and folks all around the world, really. But even in this country, it gets a little political. But it's like, to take your son out of that, it takes, economics has a lot to do with it, right? Your parents, I wish, I don't know I don't know them, I want to put words, but I would imagine if they had different means, you would have lived in a different part of the country.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would imagine,
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. I mean, but it's just, what are they going to do? Pastors last time I checked, they're not pulling in seven-figure,
right.
Well, there's a few out there, but there's a few out there.
Right, is that right?
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's unfortunate that that's just a reality. But folks like you are proving, okay, well, guess what? I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to, yeah, man, it's tough. It's tough, but your story is certainly inspiring. When you do you do inspirational speaking? And I've seen a lot of your stuff, and do you do a lot of that as well?
Yes, that's a passion of mine. That's me helping to instill into others, man. It's my purpose. I've recognized it, whether it be by sport. Again, I'm a national director for Nike sports camps as well. So I put on sports camps for the youth around the country every year. And that's just, it's the same purpose, the same intent, whether I'm speaking from a stage to a company, to an organization, or to a school. It's all the same to me. I'm helping to instill, a certain mindset and mentality into people that I'm talking to and teaching in different moments. And I love it, man. I love it so much because I know it's an immediate impact, whether they realize it or not. Obviously, it's not immediate from their end totally because they don't have a chance to fully apply it just yet. But the part that is immediate is it can immediately change their perspective. And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help people carry a solid perspective. There's no one perfect perspective. But if I can help instill a good one in people, then I've done my job. If I can help instill into a youth athlete that one more mentality, like give my all mentality, I've done my job.
Yeah. Do you get folks coming up to you? I mean, I imagine you've got your finger on the pulse of a lot of, say, young men, maybe some young women as well, coming up to you and saying, "Oh, I can't I can't make it because of this, or I'm struggling because of this. Is there a common theme that you hear coming at you?
Absolutely.
Where you're like, no, listen,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of especially when it comes to the youth, a lot of them will come to me and talk about family. My mom is always on me for this, or my dad, or whatever, or my dad isn't even around, so that's why I'm into this or that. And so that's the common themes, man. It usually dates back to the family. And I then tell almost each of them, honestly, again, as I mentioned to you, to use that as fuel and to realize the power that you have to change things in the direction that you want them to go. But think about it. That's one thing that we don't often do. We don't think about where we want to go and truly give it thought. Like we may dream about some things and let them be passing thoughts, but how often do we sit and say, here's where I want to go, and write that stuff down and actually start to devise plans for it. And that's where I try to teach teenagers now, like, look, where do you want to go? Okay, so what are some things that can actually get you there? All right, now let's think about this and that happening along the way. What could stop you from, potentially getting there? Let's write down those little hiccups so we can have some protocol in place for those potential hiccups so that when they may arise, they don't stop you. And these are things that I've taken teenagers through just to give them a vision, a realistic vision of letting them know, look, you can work as hard as you want towards a certain objective, but it's not going to be a perfect route. So just have some things ready in place that will still allow you to overcome that imperfect route and get you to that end result. But I'm just really trying to give people, that level of faith to where, again, they expect for their lives to turn around for the better.
Yeah. Well, it sounds cliche, but you're spot on. If you, there's almost nothing you can't accomplish if you, again, we live in a free country.
Yep.
And you can just, because some countries aren't like that.
Right.
I always bring that up because people forget how amazing and how blessed we are to live here.
True.
Right? You can, the government for the most part stays out of your way. But it's really amazing if you really do decide to do something and laser focus on it, and every thought in your mind is, how do I get to what that goal is? It's very, very unlikely that it won't happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
I
agree.
It's so damn true. Sometimes, yeah.
It's cause and effect. To be honest, it's just like, if it's hard to not happen if that's where you're putting your energy, your focus, your attention.
Yeah.
It's hard to not bring something about within that area of focus. It's difficult. It's difficult. But we dabble a lot, and that's where we lack. We're like, oh, you almost gave it full attention, but you didn't. That's why you didn't have that result that you wanted. If you just stay with it a little bit longer, if you were disciplined just a little bit longer, you were right there. You were right there, and we start dabbling with all these different things instead of going all in on that one thing. And again, I have a number of different industries. I do a number of things, but I tell people all the time, I do one thing at a time. I only do one thing at a time. Like, I'm national director for Nike Sports. I'm a motivational speaker. I do all that. But I only do one thing at a time. But when I do it, I do it. Like, when I work on it, I'll work on it. And that's the only thing that exists to me. And that helps me out because it gives me fulfillment knowing I'm giving this thing during this time my all. Yeah. And that's all I can be happy about. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. That is the other balance I've struggled with too. I'm very interested in a lot of things. I'm extremely interested in a lot of things. Right, this podcast is a passion project. It's not my day job. It's just something I enjoy doing. And I'm a musician. I play drums. But my day job is I'm a computer engineer by trade. Nice. So right, I can go on and on. I love a lot of different things, but. And then we say, if you want to really be successful, you have to focus on one thing. But I think there's a nuance to it, and you just articulated it. One thing at a time. Right. Yep. So if you're shifting your day between X, Y, and Z, you're probably not going to move the needle too much. But if you can focus on X, all right, get that to a certain point, then focus on Y. You can have a little bit of multidiscipline about you without sacrificing the focus.
And that's what I've told people before. I've spoken to different entrepreneurs at different expos and all. I'm like, look, you don't have to do everything every day either. You can literally segment your schedule throughout the week and say, okay, on Mondays and Wednesdays, this is my focus. I'm going to dedicate my full time toward these objectives. On Tuesday and Thursday, here's what I'm working on. It can be that second interest that you have. On Saturdays and Sundays, or whatever the case is, here's your focus, or you just give your mind a break. But you can segment things to where you're still giving them an amazing amount of attention, and you don't feel like you're cheating one for the other because you're giving them laser-like focus. It just takes, honestly, a lot of us, again, I'm guilty of it too. It takes that one day of just organizing the thing that you want to work toward. We just don't take that time to organize the many things that we want to have structured in our lives. And we feel overwhelmed because we haven't taken that moment to just organize everything and orchestrate everything. We give ourselves that one day to organize and orchestrate everything. After that day, we feel more comfortable pursuing this, and that. As opposed to being,
and it's less stressful, it's less anxiety provoking, right? It's like cognitive behavioral therapy is all about that.
That's it.
Get that on paper,
exactly,
and just you're right, and you'll be a lot less.
Get it out. You know, I that's one thing, man. Seriously, I thank God that I've adopted, because I'm one that can retain a lot in my mind and try to go ahead and attack it all, but after a while, some things will get jumbled because I'm so interested, just like you, in a lot of different things. And I'm one to where I'm doing something, and all of a sudden I see this other attractive thing over here. I'm like, oh, well, let me try that real quick. And it's like, no, stay focused. But the fact that I have begun putting things down on paper and just really laying things out for myself has helped me so much.
It's important. Yeah. Well, Joel, where can people find you?
You can. I'm on social media, for sure. Instagram, J Green PLT. That's JAY Green PLT. I love engagement. That's the thing with me. It's whether it be on a post or even a DM. I will have a full conversation with somebody. If I can help. In any regard. Yeah. If somebody even of late been reaching out about my book, I love this excerpt. They'll send me an excerpt highlighted from my book, and I'm like, I love that, and I'll just give them a breakdown of what I meant, in detail, things like that. But on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, Joel Green, Joel Green Official on there, and my website, joelbgreen.com, and you can find my book on Amazon now, Filtering, by Joel Green. So.
Yeah, man. I'll put all those links in the show notes so folks have them. But well, Joel, I love your story, man. I really do. It's inspiring. There's a lot of inspiring people out there, but you're certainly one of them. And I just love the come from behind story. It's always a feel good story, but just to talk to someone, in detail about their journey has been amazing.
Much respect to you too, man, for yours. Seriously, man. I appreciate you letting me know about yours. That's much respect.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All right, brother. I'll let you go. I appreciate your time, and I'll let you know when this publishes, and we'll go from there.
Awesome.
But be well, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, absolutely.